Thank you very much for joining me today. For everyone who may not have heard about your company or the idea that you have, can you tell me in simple terms what is it that your business offers or will offer and what problems you are solving?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for letting me speak to you. Obviously, great to speak to a fellow founder and share ideas and kind of ensure that we're both on the path towards fulfilling our mission. So what we're building is an AI law firm, a platform that allows businesses to upload their contracts. We have our own internal AI that does an amazing first pass of all of these contracts to ensure that when a lawyer in the loop checks the final review, it's actually doing so in a much quicker time, which allows the pricing for the businesses to be much cheaper.
So how did you start it? What's the story? Where the idea came from?
I went to Queen Mary, studied law there, did my master's at Cambridge, which is where I met my co-founder, also at Cambridge, and he did AI research and machine learning. And from then on, became a lawyer. As a lawyer, I was seeing the work I had to do with a lot of these businesses day in, day out, that there's a lot of problems that businesses encounter with their contracts. And I was fortunate enough to work in a law firm where these clients were, they had a lot of money, they were very well off, they had their own lawyers, even internally. But the moment you were dropping down towards kind of, the average business that doesn't have thousands and thousands to spend on lawyers to just answer their email like that, they actually don't review their contracts a lot. They're not engaging a lawyer. And I already saw that in my job, and I thought, okay, that's a really interesting space. That's a really big problem because, I'm sure you have it as well. Every time you go for, a dinner or a party and someone talks about lawyers, it's never positive, right? It's always about, oh, they cost too much, they take so long. One lawyer said A, the other said B, and we all know that problem exists. And then the question is, how do we best deal with it? And I found that there's already a lot of companies out there that are building for law firms to be more efficient. So you can think of like a Harvey or a Legora, and they're doing very well, but that doesn't really fix the problem, right? The lawyers are going to be more efficient internally, but they're still going to charge the businesses the maximum that they can. And so I thought that there was a real space to do that. So I quit my job, which was a big decision given, it's obviously a very good career that you're giving up. But I thought, okay, this is really something I want to pursue. And one of my best friends is an AI researcher by background. So we said, okay, this has to be the perfect team to try and fix this. And that's how we started. And then we consulted businesses kind of on a consultancy basis with legal contracts to better understand it. We created a WhatsApp kind of pocket dial lawyer experiment as well that we played around with. And we saw that was actually getting quite a bit of demand so that they could speak to a lawyer whenever. And then now we're here, which is we want to build this full-on end-to-end platform for businesses to deal with a lawyer.
In every industry, there are certain things that are done and accepted as they are, and there are people who don't want to see the change. Do you see that
Yeah.
within your industry? Like, do you have those kind of problems? Do you see that?
Absolutely. I would argue that the legal industry is the most defensive against advancements like this, and I'm sure that we're going to get a lot of pushback and a lot of lobbying from law firms and lawyers and potentially even regulators to make it as difficult as possible for us to achieve this, because a lawyer's incentive is to bill by time, right? And that industry is already so well built that it's no one in this structure, this original structure that's billing by time, will be incentivized to change that. Because if you go to a law firm and you say, hey, I can make your lawyers 80% more efficient by using AI, they'll be like, great, we'll use that, but we're not going to charge our clients
Less.
80% less. We're going to charge them more. And so actually, even in that question, most of them will say, well, why would I do that? Right? Either they're sadistically thinking, okay, we can just charge the same amount but do way less work, or they'll go, no, why would I do that? Because I'm a partner. This is essentially my business. All the money that I earn comes from junior lawyers doing the work manually, and that's how I make my profit. So if I remove them, how am I justifying the bill that I give to the client. So yeah, there's a huge resistance there, a huge resistance. But luckily, in the UK, their openness to making legal advice more accessible is definitely at the front of jurisdictions. And there's just been a recent announcement of the first AI-powered law firm being approved officially by the regulators in the UK a couple of weeks ago. And they focus on debt collection. And it shows you that there's a path towards becoming an AI law firm that's regulated. And that's the goal, right? Because I think if you're not trying to become literally a replacement of these traditional lawyers, but just better in every sense of the word, there will always be this question of, am I getting the best, the best advice? Am I getting, are they cutting corners? And we don't want to do that, right? We want to really be the full protection that you get, but just much cheaper, much quicker, and much more accessible.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of AI, I guess, to just, bring that innovation and efficiency really in any industry that it is there. So on the personal note, how is it going? Can you help me understand what kind of problems you are facing? Maybe you could share as well a little bit more about your background, what you were doing before going to the law school, so people can get to know you a little bit better.
I studied law coming from Germany, so I'm Dutch by background, but I kind of grew up in a couple of different countries because of my dad's job, and came to London because I thought I want to live in London. I don't care what university I study at. I just want to be there. It was a great choice because I met a lot of friends. I met a lot of important people in my life, and I realized pretty early on that studying law, and I think this is the way that Europeans, I would say, generally feel about law, which is if you study law, it's usually a subject that you do if you don't know what you want to become, but it's a really good base to use for whatever you want to do, right? It's hard work, but the things that you learn in studying law and the way you have to structure your arguments and how to work hard, I think that applies in this profession, and you can do whatever you want with that.
How long you've been running your business?
I quit end of July, my job as a lawyer. Then I would say from August, it was very much focusing on building this. But I would say that the first 6 months was very much ideating what we're actually building. Obviously, that's quite a challenging aspect because you're going from having a salary to not, and then doing it in a philosophy of let's just ideate and try some things, but not really commit to anything, to just understand where the space is and what we can really do. And really start pivoting already in the beginning and getting used to that feeling. I think if you get stuck straight in and you just pursue it and it doesn't work, but you're not used to asking these questions, I think it's quite difficult to tell yourself in the mirror, like, hey, is there something we're doing wrong or like we need to do differently? So that was important, and that took quite a long time. And I think what we're actually building now, we started doing only beginning of February. And my co-founder joined us full-time from 1st of April. So I think the real challenge for me was convincing my friend to join me on this journey. That was the first war I had to win, because you need to do it with someone that you trust, that is smarter than you in everything that you don't know, and they rely on you in the things that they don't know, and you create this perfect relationship. And it's true that you really are married to your co-founder. So I think it's super important. I don't think it's something you can really fabricate by just finding someone on the street. You really need to get to know these people, spend time with them. I think probably do a boot camp in the beginning. That's what we're doing, for the last 2 months, is we're sitting, it's only us two in a house, working all day, spending time together. And yeah, we're starting to bicker and argue a bit like a couple, but then we smile it off and we're like, okay, let's get back to work. Like, you're right, and I'm sorry, and all this, usual stuff. So you have another relationship, but that's a struggle in itself, because you go from a friendship to now being super close friends, but with something at stake beyond the friendship, right?
Have you had that moment already where you were like, didn't want to do it, when you wanted to give up?
Yeah, there's definitely some daily moments where you think, what are we doing? What have I done? Yeah. It's already been almost a year. What have we to show for it? But those are the little demons in your head that sprinkle fear. And I think ultimately, yes, you should take them seriously, because they force you to make the right decisions when you need to ensure that your business can be viable. But I think after that feeling, there are moments of triumph that are far outweighing that. And I think regardless of the success that you have, that feeling will always be there, at least for me. We're now at the phase where we really have almost a public launch ready, and in the background, we've been working with a lot of businesses to test out our dashboard and how our lawyers are working and building our AI. And yeah, we're not making millions. We're not even making tens of thousands, but every customer that comes back and says, "This is awesome. It's solving my actual problem." That's the only thing you want to hear, right? You don't care about the invoice or how much you're making out of it. That's just a means to extend you solving that problem. It's the only thing it is, right? It's not like, oh, I got this money now, I can do X, Y, Z. No, it's someone is paying for something to be solved, which is allowing me to solve it for a longer period of time and hopefully for more people. And I think that feeling always outweighs the struggles that you hear in your head of like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And, you just have to, in a way, ignore them, right? And yes, you need to ignore them, but in a smart way of like, am I like, yes, it is a real possibility that I will run out of money or I need to go and find a job again. So I need to make sure I'm working as hard as possible and doing the things right so that I'm not going back there, right? And the question is, when do you tap out, right? Like, it's like you can't do it forever. So you also have to be honest with yourself. Like, is this going in the right direction? Yeah. Obviously, yeah, I always have these thoughts, right? There are moments, but no big moment. It's just a continuous struggle, and you just have to kind of rub it off, kind of shrug it off and move on.
Let's talk about those struggles. What was your biggest problem so far?
I would say the biggest problem for me is figuring out who you're actually building this for, because you can't build it for everyone, right? And I think the struggle is sometimes it felt like we were being led down a development path for a customer that actually isn't our optimal customer. And then you just realize like, oh, why did we not see this, or why didn't we not ask ourselves these questions? But you're sometimes too close to the elephant to see that there even is an elephant. So I think that's the biggest thing. And to answer it kind of more concretely, it's the fact that we have businesses that we're helping, but some of them are let's say early stage startups, which, if it's just a founder and a couple of employees and the founder is the real decision maker, it actually still is a consumer rather than a business. If you have a friendly customer, and you ask them like, oh, if we increased our pricing, what would you do? Or what would you need to make this better for you? Or what would you do if we didn't exist? If their answers are very much, oh, if you increase the pricing, I'm going to look elsewhere, or I need X, Y, Z and all these features, and I need it to all be perfect. And I think if they answer it that way, it is a telltale sign that they are very quick to churn away to the next product that is better than yours. And there will be an inevitable time that a product is better than you, right? Like, that's the biggest question. Like, how are you defensible? And I think steering away from those customers and not taking it personal and saying like, well, I do still want to solve it for you and I want to make you a happy customer, because as an entrepreneur, you want to make everyone happy. I think that's the biggest struggle, right? And making sure you're not going down the path of doing it for them. No, I think you need to build it for the customers that are saying, if you increase prices, okay, am I going to be super happy about it? No, but I can see the value and still paying it. And if you ask them, oh, what else do you need for this product to be better? If they just say, actually, it solves my problem, everything else is a bonus, that's the businesses or the customers you want to build it for, because it shows to you that they just need their problem solved, not all the bells and whistles to be on it. And that's who you need to build it for, because everything you develop is just a plus, right? And you're not churning them the next time a competitor comes around, that they just leave, because they just need that problem solved. And if you're the one solving it best, then that's who you want to build it for. So I think that's the struggle, trying to figure that out, especially at the beginning.
Man, spot on. Going back to that very important point of money, do you have an idea how you're going to sustain that business for like a long period of time? How do you going to generate money? Like, what's the model over there?
Either we are VC backed, which adds complications and distractions in one way, but at the same time, a luxury to be able to focus more on revenue generating rather than profit generating. And that's an entirely different business model to we need to bootstrap and we need to make a profit, right? Because if we're just making revenue, but we're losing with every customer, that's not a sustainable thing. So I think realistically, we want to be VC backed, and we're in the process kind of just to really open up our kind of fundraising in the summer. And what we need that for is to essentially, the way we'll make money is businesses will pay, kind of volume based for contract reviews. And we need to be able to do that at an affordable rate so that we're actually disrupting, the legal industry. But at the same time, we need a lawyer to check it. And the question is, how do we not pay that max rate because we're not charging the customer? Well, the answer is the AI should be doing 90% of the work, which means we could even pay them the same, but they're just doing 90% less work. But it's not as easy as that. So if it's VC backed, it's less important, and it's very much just get the customers on board. They'll pay for the review. We'll burn the cash on paying for the lawyers, and it will just make us better and our AI better. If it's bootstrapped, it will be a bit of an arbitrage of negotiating with lawyers to do it for lower, so they can maybe even use the AI tool that we have for their own customers in the meantime, right? So that we can kind of cover our costs. We need to see. I think both are possible, and both are very feasible, and we're kind of struck. I want to assume that we are not getting any funding. If we get funding, it's a bonus. So we're on the path towards assuming that we're bootstrapping, and that's a feasible thing to do. And because it's a legal industry, we're not charging £15 per month, right? Like we're talking £150 upwards per month for a certain amount of contract reviews, which sounds like a lot, but obviously you need to pay these lawyers, which are expensive. But we don't need an awful lot of businesses per month to really start generating enough revenue that kind of keeps us afloat.
What's your traction already? Do you have any traction?
In terms of traction, we haven't publicly launched yet, but we have 10 businesses that are using our dashboard actively.
Okay.
So we're kind of piloting it with them. We're piloting it with them rather than they're piloting us. They're just paying the full subscription. We're getting about, I would say on average, a couple of contracts a day submitted across these businesses, which is great. That's awesome. That's like a very nice number to actually start working with. About like 50 contracts a month. So that's our traction, and it's increasing quite quickly, but obviously we're not publicly launched yet. So we're not really focused on an onboarding number, but we have a bunch of referrals from these businesses. We have a bunch of letters of intent to onboard customers when we have the capacity to do so. And that's really the traction that we have, but it's ultimately just allowing us to focus more on making sure our AI is as good as possible, and that's already occurring right now, day by day. Because every contract that comes through, we're accelerating how our AI should be dealing with it better, because a lawyer is checking it, which is me in the UK, and we have a couple of other lawyers in different jurisdictions based on some agreements we have. We have some Cypriot clients, some Brazilian clients as well. So it's kind of like very arranged in terms of where they are, and we just make sure that there's a qualified lawyer that deals with it. And that's allowing us to gather this data. So that's the most important. And then I would say in the next month, we're going to publicly launch. That will allow us hopefully to really focus on traction and make that a metric that we really need to track. Whereas right now, we're still just trying to make sure that we're optimizing with the friendly customers we have.
Let's move into the future. How do you see it for your business?
I think in the future will be a fully regulated law firm that is just essentially 99.9% AI. And that will completely disrupt the industry. It will pressure traditional legal providers to really rethink their business model, but I think it will be impossible for them to do so because there's too much money at stake for them to give up. And that's how I see it working. And I think the future will be that there is no issue of businesses and ultimately consumers not having access to legal advice. I think that's the real problem that we're, or not problem, but the real mission of ours is that in 5 years, you don't need to decide whether you're going to get a lawyer or not. I want every business and ultimately a consumer to be able to get every contract that they have reviewed, whether it's important, not important, whether it's 5 pages, 100 pages, I don't really care. I want them to all be checked so that it ultimately makes these businesses more efficient. They're spending less time on it. They don't need to pay for legal fees, or if things go wrong because they didn't go to a lawyer, to pay for disputes. In the UK alone, 14 billion pounds is being lost by SMEs on legal disputes, right? On fees, essentially.
Wow.
Because they didn't do it properly. A year, right?
A
14
year.
billion. So a year. And a recent study showed that more than 50% of SMEs have contracts that include unfair terms towards them that they shouldn't be signing. So we're talking millions of businesses, and that's what we want to. That's the future. And I think not just in the UK, we want to do this everywhere, right? The US, in Europe, in Germany, in the Netherlands, Poland, for example. So that's the mission.
We both know that being a founder is, it takes special kind of, drive, pushing forward through ups and downs. So on personal level, what gives you motivation to do it on the daily basis all the time? Like, why do you get up every day and do it and push it?
To be honest, the most important for me is that I'm in control of my life. I think objectively, it's okay for me to say that I had a pretty good life, being a lawyer at one of the best law firms, really good salary, something that I know a lot of people would wish for. And it was very nice at the time, but it wasn't fulfilling. So I think fulfillment is really at the heart of this, of can I be in charge of my own destiny and test myself as to what that destiny looks like. And that is not some kind of financial figure, but what that means to me is that I can ultimately, in hopefully 90 or 80 years, when I'm 100 years old, 100 plus years old, that I can sit on my deathbed and not have any regrets about having tried something on my own and having tried to push the boundaries of what makes me comfortable and what doesn't, because you don't have these fears when you're in a job of every day, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? They're different, right? This is, if you don't do the work, no one's doing it. Whereas at a company, there's ways that you can't do work, right? Let's be honest. So that drives me, because I'm not happy sitting in a glass office and just doing something that I'm being told, not because I don't like being told what to do, but I think I want to be that person that creates those opportunities for others, right? And that I'm doing it in a way that drives my fulfillment. So that's what really drives me.
If you could change one thing around the world, you have the power to change one thing around the world, what that would be?
I would make it compulsory to go and be more European in our culture, which is sitting at a cafe, not on our phones, watching people go by, listening to people. I would make that a mandatory rule of, at least 30 minutes a day. I think, there's lots being said about how Europe is failing in a lot of things and being too bureaucratic. But I'm proud to be Dutch and European, and I think there's no other continent like Europe that incentivizes, I think, to a big extent, this kind of lifestyle. And I don't mean all the time. I think that we're too focused on making our ecosystem and our environment too efficient. And I think, let's take the chance to also breathe and really think about what an amazing place we're in, what a world we're in, and the kind of people that come across our life. And I think that's really important, to just be able to sit outside on a bench, see people walk past, no AirPods in, no phone, and speak to your friends. I think that's important, mandatory.
It's a great idea, because I don't think people spend enough time outside, actually, especially nowadays with the technology and kids and so on and so on.
Yeah, I agree.
Willem, it was a pleasure. I actually learned a few things from you in that conversation, so thank you very much for joining.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for having me.